The morning light filtered through Martha Harrison's cream-colored curtains, casting a warm glow across her modest living room. At 78, Martha had learned to appreciate these quiet moments. She smoothed the wrinkles on her navy blue dress, the one she always wore to family dinners, not too fancy to make Patricia frown, but presentable enough to avoid looking unkempt. Her hands, marked with age spots and prominent veins, moved methodically over the fabric. David had insisted she come to dinner tonight. "It's important, Mom," he'd said. "We have some news to share." Martha had nodded, accustomed to these monthly gatherings that had grown increasingly shorter and more formal over the years. The clock on her mantel showed 5:30 p.m. Dinner wasn't until 7, but Martha had always been punctual. Punctuality was a virtue her late husband Frank had instilled in their household. "Being on time shows respect," he would say. Martha smiled at the thought of him. Her living room was like a museum of her life. Photographs documenting the milestones: her golden anniversary with Frank, David's graduation, Alex catching his first fish, Emma in her ballet recital. These images were tangible reminders that life had once been different, warmer, more genuine. Martha's gaze lingered on Frank's photograph. 15 years without him, yet she still found herself seeking his counsel. "Stand your ground, Martha," he would say. Frank had never been afraid to set boundaries, even with David. Martha, however, had always been the peacemaker, the one who compromised. Her phone vibrated on the side table. A message from David. Martha put on her reading glasses, expecting confirmation about the time or perhaps an offer to pick her up, though he hadn't done that in years. "Mom, sorry but tonight won't work. Patricia is hosting a dinner for her colleagues. We'll reschedule." Martha stared at the screen, confused. Just yesterday, David had insisted she come, saying they had important news to share. Something didn't add up. Another message followed, seconds later. "You're not invited. Patricia doesn't want you there." The phone trembled in Martha's hand, as if someone had doused her with cold water. This came from David's phone, his name attached to it. Martha slowly sank into her armchair, still clutching the phone like it was the last thread connecting her to something real. Memories flashed before her eyes. David clinging to her skirt on his first day of kindergarten, awkwardly asking for advice about what to get a girl for Valentine's Day, proudly introducing Patricia when they started dating. Now this cold, impersonal text, as if from a stranger. Was this a spontaneous decision, or had they simply finally said what they'd been thinking for a long time? How many forced smiles had they given her? How many invitations had been extended out of mere obligation? Martha's eyes drifted to the brochure on her coffee table. Riverside Estates. Their new home, a 3-story townhouse by the river with a private dock. The home for which she had contributed $180,000 6 months ago. "Mom, it's an investment," David had said. "There'll be a space for you too." My space? Martha had thought wryly. That had clearly vanished long ago. She remembered sitting at the bank, signing the transfer papers. The manager had looked at her with concern. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Harrison? It's a substantial amount." She had been sure. Frank had left her well provided for, and she wanted to help her son. That was the right thing to do, wasn't it? Then there had been the SUV for Patricia, safer for the kids. Private school for Alex. He has special needs. The kitchen renovation. Patricia deserves it. She works so hard. Each time Martha had silently written checks, believing she was doing the right thing. And what had she received in return? Obligatory holiday calls, brief visits that felt like appointments. And now this text, short, cold, without even an apology. Martha stood and walked to her study. The top drawer of her desk contained all her papers, meticulously organized in folders. The David folder was the thickest. She opened it, revealing check after check. $25,000 for a business venture he abandoned after 6 months, payments for Patricia's professional development courses, roof repairs on their old house, insurance for Alex's car, a loan for the kitchen remodel, private dental work. Martha couldn't remember how much she had paid over the years, all for the good of the family. And now she wasn't even welcome on the doorstep of the very house she had paid for. Her phone vibrated again, her heart jumped, but it was Emma, her granddaughter. "Grandma, are you coming tonight? I miss you." Martha's hand hovered over the screen. Emma had always been different, genuinely caring even when everyone else seemed to forget she existed. "Sweetheart, it seems your parents have decided it's better if I stay home." The response came almost immediately. "But Dad said you absolutely had to come." So she didn't know. Martha imagined Emma standing confused in that house where her grandmother wasn't wanted. A house bought with her grandmother's money. Martha looked at the folder again. All this time, she had thought that if she was generous enough, they would respect and love her. But in truth, she had merely been renting their attention, and the lease had expired. She picked up her phone and dialed the bank. "First National Bank, this is Sarah. How may I help you?" "Good evening, this is Martha Harrison. I need to consult about the automatic payments from my account." "Of course, we'll need to verify your identity first." As the bank representative asked standard security questions, a plan was forming in Martha's mind. Calm, cold, precise, all verified. "What would you like to do, Mrs. Harrison?" "Stop all recurring transfers and withdrawals. Everything, without exception. And cancel the power of attorney granted to my son, David Harrison." There was a pause on the line. "All transfers? You have quite a number of them." "I know. Stop everything. Effective immediately. I'll come in person tomorrow to finalize the paperwork." "All right, we'll temporarily suspend them, but we can't fully cancel without your signature." "Start the suspension now, please." As Sarah typed, Martha looked at Frank's photo. "You were right, Frank. You can't let people walk all over you, even family." "All set, Mrs. Harrison. All 18-6 regular transfers and payments have been suspended." 186? Martha repeated quietly. She had no idea there were so many. After the call ended, Martha sat motionless in her chair for a long time. Her hands trembled slightly, but inside she felt calm, as if a burden she had carried for years had suddenly slipped away. She didn't cry, she just sat in the silence of her apartment, among the photographs, the old furniture, the scent of vanilla and paper. For the first time in many years, she felt she had done something for herself. Not for her son, not for her grandchildren, not for family peace, but for herself. Her phone vibrated again. A message from David, probably alerted by Emma, but Martha didn't open it. She was done explaining or justifying herself. She opened a new message and typed a single line. "Pay for everything yourselves from now on. Good luck." Her finger hovered over the send button. To be honest, she didn't want to sound harsh, but they had been the first to bring coldness into their relationship. They had decided she was superfluous, even in a house she had bought. They had chosen to be strangers. She was simply accepting it. She pressed send, then turned off her phone. Silence. Peace. Outside, evening was falling, soft light settling on the windowsill. She stood up, went to her closet, removed the dress she had put on for dinner, and changed into her comfortable housecoat. She put the kettle on in the kitchen, where it smelled of apples. She took out an old photo album and began turning the pages. Her wedding to Frank, David in his father's arms. Family trips to the beach, dinners at their favorite restaurant. So many years, all captured in these photos. She looked at her younger self, busy, always doing something for someone. She had always postponed her own desires, her own dreams, always helping others first. Her husband, then her son, then his family, and she had put herself last. Frank had always said, "Martha, don't let people use you, even family." Before he died, he made her promise to take care of herself, as well as she had always cared for others. She had nodded then, but deep down thought, who will need me if I'm not giving myself away? Now, she understood. She needed herself. She closed the album, returned to the kitchen, made herself tea, and picked up a book she had long wanted to read. Each time, she had put it off. Alex was sick. Patricia needed money for courses. There were important family events. Now she could read whenever she wanted, could live as she pleased, without expectations, without requests, without the endless role of rescuer. The next morning, Martha woke up without an alarm, without calls, without a to-do list. She had slept well, without sleeping pills or valerian. She had breakfast, simple but enjoyable. Looking out the window, the day was clear. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel a heaviness in her chest. Martha arrived at the bank 20 minutes before opening. The street was quiet. She stood in front of the door in her coat, folder in hand. People passed by, no one knowing this was a special day for her, the day she was reclaiming her life. When the doors opened, she entered. The young woman at the counter smiled politely. "Good morning, how can I help you?" "I need to see Margaret Wilson," Martha said. She and Margaret had known each other for almost 30 years. She had handled their affairs since Frank was alive, always precise and attentive. A few minutes later, Martha was sitting in Margaret's office. She hadn't changed much. The same neat hairstyle, glasses with thin frames. "Martha, good morning. I'm aware of your call yesterday. All transfers have been suspended. Has something happened?" Martha looked her in the eye. "I want to cancel everything permanently and revoke David's access to my accounts." Margaret removed her glasses and began cleaning them with a small cloth, something she always did when considering something important. "We've known each other a long time. Are you sure? This is a radical step." "I'm sure," Martha said calmly. Margaret nodded, sat at her computer, and began typing. "All right, I'll prepare the documents. It will take a little time. You do indeed have many automatic payments." While she was preparing the papers, she handed Martha a thick folder. "These are printouts of all regular transactions for the past year. Take a look. Maybe there's something you'd like to keep." Martha opened the folder. First, the mortgage on David and Patricia's house, $3,200 per month. A house where she wasn't even allowed to stay overnight. Then, insurance on Patricia's car, that premium model she called a necessity, so she wouldn't be embarrassed driving clients around. A membership to an exclusive club where Patricia networked. A dental specialist for Alex who had an overbite. Emma's college tuition, the only payment Martha didn't regret for a second. Each line represented a conversation, a request, sometimes tears, sometimes emotional blackmail. "Mom, things are tight. Grandma, don't you want me to have the same things as my friends?" Then more renovations, clubs, tickets, tutors, gym memberships, trips. Martha sat and leafed through the pages. It was a record of her naivety, page by page, how step by step she had given herself into the hands of those who didn't value her. "Here are the documents," Margaret said. "Please review and sign if everything is correct. And here's the form to revoke the power of attorney." Martha signed without hesitation, without a tremor. "If you need help or advice, call me." Margaret looked at her. "You look different today." Martha smiled, genuinely for the first time in a long while. "I'm good, Margaret. Finally good." After the bank, Martha went straight to her lawyer. Robert Collins, their old family attorney, had handled Frank's affairs during his lifetime. His beard had grown grayer, his glasses thicker, but his voice remained the same. Calm, thoughtful, respectful. "Martha, what a pleasant surprise," he smiled, rising from his desk. "What brings you here?" "I want to change my will," Martha said simply, "and set up a living trust so my assets can't be touched without my knowledge." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask unnecessary questions. "Family circumstances?" he inquired gently. "Yes," Martha answered briefly. She didn't want to explain everything again, not now. She just wanted to take action. "Very well, let's look at what exactly you want to provide for." The next hour was spent on documents. Robert explained what an irrevocable trust was, how rights are transferred, how to minimize risks. Martha listened, asked questions. Surprisingly, she felt no anxiety or doubt. only clarity and a desire to protect herself. Herself, not someone else. When they finished, Martha checked her phone. 20 missed calls from David, 12 from Patricia, 5 from Alex, none from Emma. Martha wasn't even surprised. Emma always knew when to wait. "Will you have the papers ready by the end of the week?" Martha asked, standing up. "Of course," Robert nodded. "And Martha," he hesitated for a moment. "Frank always said you were much stronger than you appeared." "I'm glad to see he was right." Martha nodded restrainedly. She didn't want to cry in his office. On her way home, she stopped at the grocery store. For the first time in a long while, she shopped just for herself. She bought foods she personally enjoyed, not thinking about whether David liked this or remembering what snacks Alex preferred. Just for herself, a small thing, but somehow empowering. At home, a surprise awaited her. Emma was sitting on the steps, hugging her knees. Seeing Martha's car, she immediately ran over. "Grandma, I've been calling you all day. Why aren't you answering?" "Because I had an important day, dear. Help me with these bags." Emma took a bag and they went inside. "Dad's panicking," Emma said right away. "He says you've blocked everything." "What happened?" Martha put the kettle on, everything calm, unhurried. She wasn't rushing to answer, simply putting groceries away on the shelves. "Yes, I've stopped all the transfers. I'm tired. I can't do it anymore, not morally or financially." Emma froze. Did something happen? Martha turned to her, looking directly into her eyes. "Your father canceled my invitation to the family dinner yesterday. He said Patricia doesn't want to see me in her home. A home that I bought." Emma paled. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened slightly. "That can't be true. Dad has been saying all week how important it was for you to come." Martha showed her the message without a word. Emma read it, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God! I had no idea, honestly. This is terrible, Grandma. How could they?" Martha placed a cup of tea in front of her. "So, I thought, enough. For so many years I've helped, paid, rescued, and in the end I'm not even wanted at their table. It's time to reconsider everything." Emma was silent, her lips trembling, tears in her eyes. "You know," she said quietly, "I've seen it all for a long time. How they, especially Mom, use you. I tried talking to Dad, but he always defended her, saying I didn't understand adult matters." Martha nodded. Somewhere deep in her soul, she had always known Emma saw everything, just chose not to interfere, maybe not wanting to get involved, maybe thinking her grandmother would figure it out herself. "What now?" Emma asked. "They have so many expenses. The mortgage, Alex's school. Let them figure it out themselves," Martha replied calmly. "They are adults. David has a good job, Patricia is a successful realtor." Enough. Her phone vibrated again. "David." Martha turned off the sound. "Aren't you going to answer?" Emma asked cautiously. "Not today. Let him think. Maybe for the first time in a long time." Emma looked at her somehow differently, attentively. "You know, Grandma, I've never seen you like this." "I haven't seen myself like this in a long time either," Martha smiled. They drank tea, talked about Emma's work, about books, about plans, just conversed, without requests, without manipulation, without tension. This was real closeness. This was what family should be. When Emma was getting ready to leave, she hugged Martha tighter than usual. "Are you sure you're okay? Maybe I should stay?" "Everything is fine, dear, honestly. You go, don't worry." At the door, Emma stopped. "Grandma, I don't want to get between you all. This isn't—" "I understand," Martha nodded. "This is between me and your parents. You have nothing to do with it." After Emma left, the house was quiet again. Martha checked her email. Among the messages were notifications. Failed attempt to charge Alex's card. Already? It seemed her grandson had been living paycheck to paycheck. Martha set aside the letter, sat by the window. Her phone continued to vibrate. She paid no attention. She simply took out the old photo album, opened it to a random page. A picnic when they were still young. Frank, little David, Patricia with a 90s haircut. The children still in diapers. Smiles. Back then she had truly believed they were a real family. When had it all gone wrong? When had care turned into obligation? When had love become a financial attachment? Martha approached the mirror in the hallway. The woman in the reflection was no longer young, but in her eyes was a hardness that hadn't been there for a long time. A calm, inner firmness. "Time to remember who you are, Martha Harrison," she said quietly to herself. The doorbell rang. Her heart jumped. Could it be David? She went to the door and looked through the peephole. No, it was Eleanor Thompson, her old friend, with a basket in her hands, homemade jam and cookies. Martha opened the door, and without saying a word, Eleanor hugged her tightly, as if she had just returned from the hospital. Quietly, firmly, without unnecessary words. Martha felt her eyes tighten. She wasn't crying, but her chest constricted. How she had missed this simple human warmth, without condition. "I called. You didn't answer. Decided to come myself." "Was worried," Eleanor said, walking into the kitchen. "I turned off my phone. A bit of a family emergency." She put the basket on the table. Homemade cookies. A jar of jam. Fresh bread. "Patricia again?" She squinted, always referring to her daughter-in-law by her full name. Martha nodded. Not just her. All of them together. They sat down, and Martha told her about the message, about the canceled dinner, about how she was no longer transferring a penny to them. Eleanor listened silently, only pressing her lips together and making small sounds of disapproval at the right moments. When Martha finished, Eleanor took her hand. "Thank God," she exhaled. "I've been watching this for so many years." Wanted to say, "Martha, wake up," but knew you wouldn't listen. Martha didn't take offense. Her friend was right. "I didn't want to see it myself," she said quietly. "They used me, especially that daughter-in-law of mine. She never respected me. But I kept paying, kept forgiving, all for the sake of peace in the family." They sat for a long time over tea, talking like two women who had long understood each other. Not as a mother and grandmother, but simply as women tired of being convenient. In the evening, Eleanor left, promising to come again in a few days. Martha remained alone. Her phone rang again. On the screen, David. She didn't answer. A minute later, a message came from Patricia. "Martha, we need to talk urgently. This has gone too far. You don't understand the consequences." A smirk escaped involuntarily. When it came to money, everyone expressed concern. No one wanted to understand what it was like to be superfluous in a family you had supported for decades. Martha didn't respond to either the calls or the messages. She simply turned off the sound. The morning began unexpectedly. Someone rang the doorbell. Martha wasn't expecting anyone, and there on the threshold stood Patricia, as always perfectly coiffed, with a box of cakes from an expensive bakery, looking as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, Martha. May I come in?" Martha silently stepped aside. Patricia entered like she owned the place, looked around, put the box on the table. "We need to talk." She sat down, hands folded in her lap, voice soft, adult, as if explaining something to someone with cognitive issues. "What happened was a misunderstanding. David shouldn't have sent that message. We were on edge. I was planning an important dinner. There were clients. I needed everything to be perfect, and you could have ruined it?" Martha calmly inquired. "No, you misunderstand," Patricia faltered. "It's just that sometimes you're, well, not quite up to date with modern etiquette. You joke, awkwardly, dress, well, old-fashioned. And that's reason enough not to let your husband's mother into a house she paid for?" Patricia's face twitched. The mask almost slipped, but she quickly composed herself. "Let's not escalate. We're all having a hard time. We're in crisis. The mortgage, Alex, David's work is in jeopardy. I'm exhausted. We're all exhausted." "And what about me?" Martha asked. "Have you ever, in all these years, asked how I am?" Martha. Again with that tone, patient, cold. I'm not transferring any more money to you, Martha interrupted her. Not for the house, not for the car, not for Alex's sports club. Not a cent. Patricia froze for several seconds as if she couldn't believe it. You can't. We're family. Family is about care, respect, attention. I haven't seen that from you for a long time. I'm just an account, just a card to you. I'm a utility, not a person. You'll regret this, Patricia blurted out. When you're alone, when you get sick, who will help you? Martha calmly stood up. I'll manage as I've always managed before you, before your convenience. On my own. Patricia also rose. She left the cakes apparently still believing they could somehow restore trust. This isn't the end, she threw over her shoulder at the door. We're still family. No, Martha said. You're just relatives. Family is something else entirely. When the door closed behind her, Martha didn't feel triumph, only quiet relief, as if the last attempt to manipulate her had failed. She brewed tea, put her favorite pastries on the table, not the ones she bought for Alex, but the ones she liked. It smelled of cinnamon. It was quiet. She was finally living by her own rules. The next morning, Robert Collins, the lawyer, arrived. As always punctual, folder with documents in hand, calmly, thoroughly, without rushing. He laid everything out on the kitchen table. Everything is ready, Martha. Here's the new will and the living trust agreement. Martha nodded, not looking at the papers, signed each page clearly, without trembling. The main part of the property is transferred to an irrevocable trust, where you are the sole beneficiary during your lifetime. After your death, 40% goes to your granddaughter Emma, 10% to charity, the rest according to your instructions. David and Alex receive the minimum share as required by law. Patricia is completely excluded. Martha nodded again. That's correct. If there are conflicts with the family, call me, he said, carefully collecting the papers. But honestly, you've done everything properly. It will be difficult to contest. Thank you, Robert, for everything. He lingered, looking at her intently. You know, in my 30 years of practice, I rarely see people who decide to take such a step. Most drag it out until the very end. But you freed yourself, and that commands respect. She walked him to the door, then stood for a long time in the hallway, her hand on the folder with the signed documents. This was what freedom looked like. Papers, signatures, but most importantly, an internal boundary, a simple enough. Her phone rang again. Alex, she hesitated but answered. Hello? Grandma, is it true? You've cut everything off? Yes, it's true. But why? I didn't do anything bad to you. She heard in his voice, not aggression like Patricia's or hysteria like David's, but rather confusion, fear. He didn't know how to live without support. Alex, you're an adult, you work, you're independent. Why are you still dependent on my card? He was silent, then quietly said, I'm used to it. It's always been this way. You've always helped. And have you ever thought about how I felt? He was silent again. It's funny to you, Martha continued, but in the last 10 years, I've only received 3 calls from you without requests for money. One on New Year's, one when you needed a reference for college, and one on my birthday last year. Everything else was Grandma, transfer this, Grandma, pay for that, Grandma, solve this problem. I never thought about it, he said dully. Exactly. No one thought. They just got used to it. And only when I said no did everyone get alarmed. My card is blocked, he exhaled. I can't pay for my apartment or my car. I'm screwed. You live alone, you work. These are your expenses. Learn to manage, talk to the bank, cut expenses, find a side job. It's complicated. Life is complicated, Alex, Martha said calmly, especially when you're not constantly riding on someone else's back. He sighed, was silent for a long time. Martha gave him time, didn't interrupt. Grandma, he finally said, do you really think I'm that bad? No, she replied. I think you're accustomed to the good life. accustomed to me always being there, always solving problems. But I can't anymore. I don't want to. I'm almost 80. I want to live a little for myself. And if I didn't ask for money, he said quietly, would you still love me? Martha felt a lump in her throat. Of course, Alex. I love you, but I'm no longer willing to buy your attention. My warmth isn't contingent on transfers. He was silent, and then said something Martha didn't expect. What if I look for a job? Mr. Collins called, said you asked him. They offered me an internship at his office, sorting papers, delivering documents. I agreed. Really? Martha smiled, very quietly but genuinely. Now that's an adult conversation, Alex. Thank you. Thanks, Grandma, for everything. And I'm sorry. He hung up. Martha was left alone with a cup of tea, with her phone turned off, but her soul wasn't empty as before. It was light, not because everything had suddenly worked out, but because she had finally stopped living in debt to everyone, stopped being the eternal support system for those who took her for granted. That same evening, Emma came by, as always without warning, just knocked and entered as if at home. Martha was sitting in the kitchen, leafing through a travel agency catalog. Emma immediately noticed this. Grandma, are you planning to go somewhere? I'm thinking of going to Italy, Martha said simply. Your mother always turned up her nose when I talked about it, saying it wasn't the time, it was an unnecessary expense. But now I've decided, if not now, then when? Emma laughed. That's right. My God, Grandma, you should have done this 20 years ago. Why did you always put everything off? Because there were always more important matters. First David's school, then work, then Alex, then your mortgage, then Patricia's renovations. And I kept waiting for later to be my time, but later never came. Emma sat across from her. And now I'm free. Understand? I don't owe anyone anything, not a penny, not an explanation. She looked at Martha with a new kind of respect. You look different, stronger. I feel different too. I'm no longer serving. I'm living. They drank tea. Emma told her what was happening at home. Mom's hysterical, she said, stirring sugar. This morning she went to the bank, wanted to restore access to the account. She thought you were just emotional. They politely turned her away, said everything was legally sound, and now she's nobody. I told her so, Martha replied calmly. Dad walks around like a beaten dog. He has two states now. Either he's angry, or he sits staring into space. It hit him hard. Martha didn't gloat. She even felt a bit sad. This was her flesh and blood, her son, but she knew if she gave in now, everything would repeat itself. They sold Mom's car, Emma added. That expensive one bought with your money. Dad took out loans to cover urgent payments. He says Mom is also looking for a second job. Martha sighed, not with relief, but with understanding. Everything had fallen into place. When there are no free safety nets, you have to stand on your own feet. You know, Emma said quietly. I don't envy your freedom, but I respect it. You've earned it. Thank you, dear. Truly. She touched Martha's hand. Just promise you'll go. Stop living on leftovers. You deserve a beautiful life. I want you to see how people really live, not through photographs in albums. Martha nodded, and at that moment, she already knew she would go. When Emma left, Martha sat for a long time in the kitchen. The catalog showed photographs of Venice, Tuscany, Rome. Frank had dreamed of showing her Italy. His grandfather was from there. They had always said, when we retire, then we'll go, but retirement came, and his health no longer allowed it. Now she could. She took out an old atlas. There, in the margins, was a mark. Frank had once outlined his favorite routes. She ran her finger along the map, lightly, as if along a lifeline. The doorbell pulled her from her thoughts. Alex stood on the threshold, rumpled, with circles under his eyes, in that same backpack he always carried to school. He looked not like a grandson, but like a lost teenager. Grandma, can I come in? Martha silently nodded. He entered the house, took off his jacket, sat in the living room. He didn't beat around the bush. "I'm in trouble," he said immediately. "Big trouble. Cards are blocked. The bank is demanding payments. Rent is overdue. Car is in the impound lot. I can't cope." "And what do you want?" Martha asked calmly. He looked at her like a cashier in a store approached without money, with an empty look. "Money. I'm not asking for a handout. I'll pay it back." "Alex," Martha interrupted him, "you're an adult now. You work. You know how adults live. They pay for themselves, for their apartments, for their mistakes." He lowered his eyes. "I can't cope, because you've never tried." He fell silent. They sat in silence. Then Martha said, "I won't give you money, but I gave your number to the lawyer. He has some work, small stuff, archives, phones. Start with that. You won't earn much right away, but you'll start breathing on your own." He looked at her for a long time. In his eyes was something new, a mixture of resentment and gratitude. "You still love me, don't you?" "Very much. But now not in dollars, for real." The morning was quiet. Martha woke up early, without anxiety. She prepared breakfast, unhurried, brewed coffee, put cookies on the table, opened the window. Fresh air, the quiet rustle of cars, and the smell of spring. She knew today would be a conversation. David had called the day before. "Mom, we want to talk. The whole family." Calmly, without scandals. "We're coming at 2. Martha hadn't objected. She wasn't afraid of anything anymore. Exactly at 2, the doorbell rang. Martha looked out the window. 3 cars parked at the house. On the steps, Patricia, as always dressed up, in a coat and heels. Behind her David, Alex, Emma, and about 6 more people. Patricia's parents, her sister with her husband, some acquaintances. Martha didn't even recognize everyone right away. She opened the door. "Good afternoon," Patricia said loudly, as if announcing something important. "We're all here to discuss the situation as a family." Martha looked at her calmly. "Come in, just you, David, Alex, and Emma. The rest? No." Patricia froze. "But these are all close people. This is support. We're resolving this together." "This is my house," Martha interrupted. "I decide who enters. Either you come in, the 5 of you, or no one." Silence. Everyone exchanged glances. In Patricia's eyes was displeasure. David looked confused. Alex wouldn't meet her gaze. Emma stood to the side, as always, quiet. "Fine," Patricia said through gritted teeth. "Let's go." They entered. The others remained outside. Some demonstratively moved to the fence. Some remained standing at the gate, as if this wasn't a conversation in a house but a trial. In the living room, they sat down, Martha opposite them. They were silent for almost a minute. "Mom," David spoke first. "We want to understand why everything is so abrupt. Why you canceled everything. We could have talked. Why shut everything down immediately?" "I didn't shut down immediately. I was silent for 20 years, Martha said calmly. "And all that time, you took and didn't ask how I was. And now, when I said enough, you got scared, not for me, but for your accounts." "We're not scared," Patricia interjected. "We just think it's inappropriate. Family should help each other." "Family, yes, but not one way," Martha interrupted. "For years I've been your ATM, not a person with feelings." Martha saw the expressions on their faces. Patricia's anger barely contained, David's uncertainty, Alex's downcast eyes. She knew this confrontation was long overdue. "Mom," David began again, his voice strained. "You never said anything. You always offered. We thought you were happy to help." "I offered out of love," Martha replied. "But you took it as an obligation. You took and took until there was nothing left of me except what I could provide." David pressed his fingers to his forehead. Emma sat quietly to the side. Alex looked up for the first time. "Grandma," he started, "I've agreed to work at Mr. Collins' office. I'm interning there. Want to make it on my own. Honestly, thank you for pushing me. Patricia spun toward him sharply. What? You knew about this? Yes, he said. I think Grandma is right. We pushed too far. Emma approached Martha quietly, hugged her, and whispered, I'm with you, always. Martha looked at her grandchildren, one learning to live differently, the other already grown, calm, genuine. This is my real family, she thought. I'm not throwing you out, Martha said, but I've set boundaries. This isn't war, it's an adult conversation, and I won't go back to where I'm not respected. Patricia stood like a statue, lips pressed together, eyes angry. Let's go, she snapped at David. We're done here. He rose, not looking at Martha, silent. They left, only Emma lingering for a moment to embrace Martha tightly, without words. When the door closed, Martha felt neither victory nor bitterness, only quietness and lightness. 6 months passed. The Italian sun warmed Martha's shoulders as she sat on the terrace of a small restaurant somewhere in Tuscany. Before her was a glass of white wine, a basket of warm bread, and a plate of pasta. No rush, no demands, no urgent calls beginning with Grandma, I urgently need. With her was Eleanor. As promised, she had come along. Now she was enthusiastically writing something in her notebook. Every day, she recorded her impressions, while Martha simply sat, looking at the vineyards, breathing in the air. I can't believe we're here, Martha said aloud. I'm 78, and I'm finally living how I always wanted. Frank would be proud of you, Eleanor replied, raising her glass. To you, Martha? To us. To us, Martha smiled. Much had changed in the last 6 months. David and Patricia first tried to pressure her, then to plead, then they took offense. A few times, David came with flowers and words like, Mom, I'm sorry, but each visit ended with, now perhaps you could, and Martha refused again. Over time, they understood this was permanent. Patricia, as Emma had told her, quit her previous job and found work as a rental agent. It's a struggle, she said. Emma reported they sold the house and moved to a smaller apartment. Strangely, this had been beneficial. Without a safety net, they had started to grow forced, but still growing. Alex worked for Robert Collins, helping with cases, processing documents. Sometimes he called without requests, just to ask how she was. Martha felt it was genuine for the first time. She and Emma spoke almost every day. Emma had insisted Martha not postpone her trip, helped choose the itinerary, book tickets, even bought her a new suitcase. You're living now, she'd said. Do it beautifully. Martha remembered how, as a child, she had dreamed of going somewhere quiet, with delicious food and no one rushing her. And here she was, not for someone else's sake, not out of politeness, not as a debt, but simply because she had the right. Martha and Eleanor walked around towns, visited shops, tried cheese, laughed, took photos of each other. And each evening, Martha realized she wasn't alone because she was finally with herself. That evening, she sent a message to Emma. Darling, Italy is a wonder. Come someday. I'll show you that little street where they make coffee like in the movies. I love you very much. She attached a photo herself against the backdrop of vineyards, in a light shawl, with wrinkles, with tired but clear eyes. Alive, real, free. In the evening, Martha went out onto the balcony. Eleanor was reading a book. Martha simply looked at the sky. It was a warm, deep blue. Somewhere below, crickets sang. She had made it. Yes, she had spent decades, hundreds of transfers, thousands of silent concessions. But she had managed to say enough. She had managed to choose herself, managed to live at least a little, not as a convenient woman, but as the mistress of her own life. Her phone vibrated again. David. She didn't answer. Maybe later, or maybe never. Right now, she had more important things to do living.